Okay, so my goal for you for this assignment is for you to either trace out your own or a hypothetical student's pathway at American University to graduation. So you can put your own major and your own degree and minor in here, or you can just make something up. But I want you to practice reading the academic regulations and applying them to your student. I'm going to call my student Sally and give her the last name Sample, and she's matriculating in fall of 2025 with an intended BA in International Studies. Her minors will be data science and computer science, and please note this is a simplified checklist. It does not contain all necessary information, and students must abide by all regulations contained in the catalog the year they matriculated. So this is why I said that Sally is matriculating in fall of 2025. She will be following the guidance from the 2025-2026 catalog. Okay, now the biggest thing I want you to note for this activity is I want you to note requirements and prerequisite structure. So the first question you want to ask is, can I actually fit the things I want within the time I have allotted? Some people may not want to do 2 minors or even 1 minor. The minors are optional. I'm doing it for instructive purposes. If you're somebody who likes to explore, or maybe you change your mind about what you want to do, then you should leave extra room for requirements, to not fill requirements so that you can have electives. And that's perfectly good, and that's part and parcel to what we do here at the university, is we explore things. So because Sally is coming in fall of 2025, this is essentially what her core curriculum is going to look like. It's going to look like this, okay? And so I'm not going to put as much time into explaining this because I've already mapped it out. I do want to explain that in the vast majority of cases, Q1 has to be taken before Q2, okay? The exceptions would be people who come in with AP credit and can jump around and do that. Let's assume that you have to take Q1 before Q2, and likewise, both of your W's are going to need to be done. W1s are going to be done before your W2, okay? So make that assumption. Again, there may be exceptions for transfer students or other such things. But for the AU core, these are the prerequisites, what you have to be aware of. Q1 comes before Q2, and W1 comes before W2. Other than that, I'm going to assume there aren't prerequisites that we have to worry about, although there may be exceptions, okay? I'm assuming that there's no other prerequisites we need to be aware of in the core curriculum, this 42 hours that you're going to be applying towards your 120 hours, okay? What do these other notations mean? Well, you have to have a 2.0 GPA when you graduate. That means it might dip below temporarily, but you might be put on academic probation until you bring it back up. But that would be the reason why. They don't want anybody struggling through and not making that 2.0 cutoff and then getting a nasty surprise in their senior year. So that's why somebody who can't bring their GPA up might be dismissed. It's actually to prevent them from wasting all their money when they aren't able to bring their GPA up. Okay, so that's just something to keep in mind. You need to have 120 credit hours plus a major. So you can't just have random 120 credit hours. You have to complete the gen ed requirements, but you also need to complete your major requirements for your selected major. You have to take 45 of your credit hours within your last 60 hours. So think about your last 2 years at AU. 45 credit hours have to be here. And your last whole experience here at AU, essentially you need a minimum of 2 years worth. It wouldn't make sense for somebody to transfer the last semester of their senior year, take 2 credits, and then get an AU diploma, now would it? So you're going to have the majority of your classes at AU in order to earn that AU degree, and clearly the last big chunk of your last 2, your junior and senior year, very little opportunity for transfer credit in. Now, you're going to need 42 hours here from your core, but beware of this capstone because it's also going to be listed in your major for the most part. There are some majors that may rely on the fact that this is listed in the AU core, but most majors will additionally require you to do the capstone within the major. So don't double count it. When you're counting the number of hours you're going to be earning from your major. Okay, let's work with Sally Sample and see what her requirements are for her BA in International Studies. You can start with Google. And hopefully it will land you into the right zone. And what I found when I went here before is they give this really neat explanation that doesn't make any sense. And then you have to click further to get to what you want. So right now, this page that you may land on first is kind of an overview, and it actually gives quite a bit of information, but it's there to answer the questions for people who are applying to the program, not people who are in the program trying to track out their actual course schedule. So go ahead and read that if that's your major, but then what you're going to do is look for where the real requirements are. Aha, there they are. What you want is something that looks more like this, something that's very stripped down and basic, and then just lists, okay, here's all your AU core requirements. We already talked about those. But then, what are your major requirements? Let's go ahead and see if we can understand the structure of what's being said here. By the way, I am making the assumption that the information on the departmental webpage is not in conflict with this document, which is the ultimate authority for what is what, unless there's a typo, okay? So Sally Sample could also go in here to find out her requirements, and this is the official authority. This going down this track should give you the authoritative answer to what she needs to graduate. But I'm going to stick with this because the formatting is very nice and things are clicked together, and I'm just going to work off of this. If it is your major, you should double check that the course catalog actually matches your department's website, and please talk to an advisor or somebody in that department, like the department chair or somebody in that department who can help you understand if you think there's a discrepancy between the two. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start copying down these things into my personal checklist over here. I'm going to scroll down, and these boxes are all here for you to fill out by hand. One thing I wanted to note as I'm jotting these in is I want you to note that almost all courses at American University are 3 credit hours, but some are not. So as you're filling in this table, if there is a course that is 2 or 1 or 4 or 5, or any number other than 3 credit hours, I want you to note that down. If you don't write anything, I'm going to assume that you're talking about a 3 credit course, in which case you can then go back and check how many boxes you have and multiply by 3 to find out how many credit hours you've earned. So I just copied all these foundation courses, so these first 18 credit hours all the way down to CISU 205 is considered foundation. So there's 18 credit hours for foundations. Okay? And then this one here is different, and we'll talk about that. And 206 and 306 are different again. So we'll talk about that in a second. All right, so these different requirements fill different roles, and sometimes they need explanation and sometimes they don't. So let's go ahead and see. This is econ. This is your econ class. And they're telling you if you're also double majoring in economics, then there's a different way to meet this requirement. But for the standard student, that's what you're going to take. These guys are going to be research, methodology. Okay, so you get 3 credits from econ, 6 credits from research methodology, and you need a language. Now, here's something to note. It has to be from intermediate 2 or above. So the assumption I'm going to make is that you took some kind of AP French or Spanish or something like that in high school, and you're allowed to go directly to intermediate 2 level. If that is not the case, then you have to meet those prerequisites before you move on. But just in the most basic case, I'm going to assume you're taking a language at intermediate 2 level, okay? And so there you go for that. Now, they start describing something that is somewhat unique to this major. It says there are thematic areas, and you have to take 9 credit hours. That means three credit courses from 3 different thematic areas. And they list them as P, E, F, and so on. There's like 8 of them, okay? So for each of these thematic areas, they have what they call a gateway, and you have to take that class as a prerequisite to taking these other classes, okay? So they're saying that this requirement is to take 3 different gateways. Then, through one of your gates, you're going to take 2 additional courses, and through a different gate, you're going to take 3 additional credit hours. So, I'm going to just list this as follows. So, this is just suggestive that you're going to have gateway courses for area A, B, and C, and then 2 of them you're going to continue. And maybe you won't. Maybe that's not the way it's going to work for you. Maybe you just don't like any of them, and then you just take more gateways, and you say, you know what, I'm just going to use those as my electives, and I'm going to take different gateways because I want my major and minor themes to be different. I've come to realize what I'm really interested in now. I'm interested in Asia, not Western society, whatever. That's fine. You can switch things up, but I'm just going to make the simplifying assumption that one of the 3 gateways, the courses you take, is going to lead to your major theme, and another one's going to lead to your minor theme. Okay, so then what? So I'm going to scroll past all this discussion of the 8 different thematic areas, and there's 9 credit hours in one of the following 6 regional areas. So you pick your regional area and you take 3 credits there. Okay, so now you're going to take 3 times 3 hours, so 9 hours here. And you had 9 hours here, and you had 9 hours here. Okay, so these things all have to add up in the end to 120 or more. It's fine if it adds up to 123 or 125. Most people aren't going to go way over 120, but it's hard to land exactly on 120, so that's fine. Okay, so there's also a capstone. However, the capstone is also recorded here, and so it's not exactly... You don't have to write it down here again if you're counting, if you're going to use this capstone this way. So just beware of that. Okay, so they said you're going to need 54 hours plus 3 hours for the language. They count this one separate. But what really ends up happening when you're gridding it out this way, you're going to get 54 hours including the language because 3 hours went over here for the capstone. So let's just see if this adds up to 54 hours. So we just count this like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 times 3 is, bingo, 54. So we've got 54 credit hours that we've accounted for. And how many did we have above? We had 42 credit hours already accounted for in AU Core. So that brings us to 96, but we need 120. Right? So we're still down at least 24 credits. So what are we going to do? We're going to take more classes. Now, if you don't want to take a minor, you don't have to. But again, this is for instructional purposes. So I'm going to go ahead and give Sally Sample a minor in data science and a minor in computer science. So let's go look those up. So hopefully you will land in the right place. Make sure you're at American EDU. If you're anywhere else, then you're not going to get the right information. So while we're looking that up, I actually happen to already know what Sally has to take. Okay, so I've hit a snag, and I'm going to go ahead and tell you that I hit a snag. For whatever reason, I wasn't able to pull that information up, so I'm going to go ahead and follow the link they gave me and look to see if it's in here, right? There should be a data science minor in here, and it should have the same information I pulled up previously, or maybe I'm just having a bad internet day. So I'm going to continue explaining this while I try to look things up. Okay, so what I found before is that this student needs the following 5 3-credit classes, okay? But even though they say you need 19 credit hours, it's not 19 credit hours, it's only 15. Why? Why is there a discrepancy? And that's because I'm going to assume that that student is going to use as their Q1 Stat 202 or 203 as their Q1, so that they don't have to retake or take more credits to get the full 19 hours just in this zone. So there are sometimes prerequisites that can be met up in the core curriculum, and it saves you having to take a class later. Okay, so one thing before we go on, I'm gonna actually do one more minor for this student, and I'm gonna ignore this last box. Part of the reason I made all these gray boxes is so that you can have more room to spill out. Depending on whether you take some 4-credit classes or 3-credit classes, when you get down here, you may actually be done with your major. But if you're taking a whole bunch of 1-credit classes, you're going to need more boxes to grid everything out. So that's why I changed the color to sort of key you in that you're getting near the end of your program. You don't have that much more space to work with. But I happen to know I did this already, and this all fits within the 120 credit hours. So I'm going to go ahead and give this student another minor. Okay, so these are academic majors. And if I go to data science, I wonder if it tells me what they need to do to get their minor. So I'm intentionally letting you see me get lost because I want you to know it's okay to have to look around for this information. It's not always just going to pop up the first time you click, but it is definitely there. You will find it, and I don't know what's with my internet. Regardless, I had this information before, so I'm going to go ahead and key in the information I had before while I'm waiting for that to come up. This computer science minor has first a 4-credit class, and then the rest of them are 3 credits. And I'm going to put a star on this because I want you to know it's going to be hard to look it up. And then what's going to happen is you're going to have 3 computer science electives. So a total of 3 electives. All right, so this course is going to occupy 1 block. This is going to occupy a block. This one's going to be hard to find, but we will find it. And this one, I'm going to just put it here in its own little box. So this should give you 10 credit hours instead of 9 because you got the 4 there. And this is going to give you another 9 credit hours. Okay, so we're going to have to add up all the numbers in the circle and see if we can get our degree with that, and it'll work. But yeah, let me just see if this page loaded. Okay, so we have major requirements, electives, blah, 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 minor. Aha. So there should be a link that takes you to this. Let's see if my internet will work. I feel like I'm on dial-up or something. This is so weird. All right. So the data science minor is 19 credit hours. Like I said, it's really 15 because you probably took one of these classes as your Q1 or possibly your Q2. So it's probably already cleared. In fact, if you take this one as your Q1 and this one as your Q2, then you don't have to worry about that. But I'm going to assume that you take this one as part of your minor, okay, just for the sake of argument. You can make whatever assumptions you want, but you just have to lay out what your assumptions are. Okay, now that just verifies that what I wrote, I'm not lying to you about what the requirements are. And now I want to do the same thing for computer science. Okay, so hopefully this will work. Not sure it's working. Let me pause. I'm just literally having trouble pulling this up. Let's see if it's on the website here. I think I'm back to the same page that wasn't loading before. Let me pause this. So this link is obviously outdated and it takes us here, which is the wrong catalog. So we may as well just go to the correct catalog. Beware of that kind of thing. These requirements are probably not going to change dramatically, especially for the minor. The one class may be swapped out for another, but for the most part, it's going to be okay. Like this level of planning, we're just trying to get a sketch to see if this is going to work. Okay, this is kind of ridiculous, so I'm just going to go from here and see if we can do the big calculation here. First of all, are we getting 120 credit hours? So this is already 42. This has been checked. That's 42, and so we get 42 plus, there's 18, 3, 6, 3, that's 12, plus 9, plus 9 and 9 is 18, plus 15 more, plus 19 more. So let's see what that adds up to. Okay, so it's telling me that's 133, which is more than we need it's over by 13. It's 13 more. So that's like basically 3 extra courses. And that's totally doable if you came in with AP credit or if you're taking a summer class. Sometimes you can get these courses to double duty, like for example, like this Stat 320. If that is your Q2, then that's not going to count against this 133. It'd be closer to 130 then. So also sometimes there's a course over here that might count as a CS elective. Something like that can happen. So it isn't necessarily going to be 133, but this might be pushing it if you didn't come in with some AP credits to start with. Okay, so let's see over here what happened as we ended up down here again. This is kind of annoying. So I'm just going to see if I can get computer science. Again, if I can go from computer science BA or BS, it doesn't matter. I should be able to hop over to the minor once I get to the major page. I don't know why this is just hanging so badly. So again, usually you scroll down and see what the minor says. Major requirements. Not useful, is it? Okay, so let's try this again. This is the link I want. Okay, this is literally only failing because I am doing a recording. It literally worked right before I did the recording, but I'm going to go to the Wayback Machine and see if they have it. This is just a generally good trick to use when the website you're on is hanging for no apparent reason. So you can just take this. Oh! I threatened to use the Wayback Machine, and there you go. Here's your electives. You get these 10 credit hours that I already wrote down for you, and then 9 electives at a 300 plus level approved by the advisor. That just means there may be certain courses that are taught at a 300 level or above, which are not allowed as minor electives. It doesn't happen too often, but there are some. You can write a course proposal and it can be approved, and you can say this is not eligible for use in the minor. That can happen. Okay, so that's what that means, approved by the advisor. So everything we wrote here is correct, and the next step, big step, is going to change. So we've now cleared the hurdle of making sure you have enough credits to graduate, and that means if you're going along and you decide to drop the CS minor and you just have these courses, you probably don't need to take any of these, right? So you keep track of what you're doing, and maybe you could ditch the data science. I don't care. At some point, you've accumulated enough credit hours, and maybe you're just going to go take French again. Maybe you want to take Portuguese. I don't know. So you just backfill make sure you have 120 credit hours, and if you really wanted a minor, you got it. If you decided against it, you don't have to take a minor, but you're required to take the major. That is required, okay? So next step is, what I wanted to show you is prerequisites, right? That's what I said. Your requirements, we've got them listed now, and now we want to look at the prerequisite structure. So we already know that your core curricula is going to have this. And also, by the way, I think you have to have, there's a little bit of prerequisite here. You can't take 101 and then 100. You can't take 103 and then 102. You have to take these in the right order. But I don't think that's going to be a problem. It's kind of obvious, but I'm just saying that. But the real prerequisites we need to worry about are down here, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to check that out. Now, you can do that in the course catalog, but so like if you click on here, it'll discuss the different courses. But the other way you can figure this out is go to the schedule of classes. Okay, now you should just be able to look up, clicking on browse schedule of classes. I'm going to assume that the courses you want are being offered in the term you're looking, but this is why there's a star over here on CS 256. It isn't offered in the fall. So in order to search for it, we're going to have to flip over to the spring. There are some courses that are only taught every 4 semesters, in which case you're going to have to go to the course catalog or dig into one of these other semesters to find the little blurb that talks about that course. But for most of the classes, you're just going to go to the same semester you're in, and I see I have a lot of econ classes on the list. So I'm going to just go right to econ. Here we go. And I'm going to search for them. And I'm going to use this to note down any prerequisites. Now, it turns out Econ 100 and Econ 200 are completely unlinked. One of them is microeconomics and one of them is macroeconomics. And it doesn't actually matter which order you take them. You can take them at the same time if you like. But just the fact that they're numbered 100 and 200 is something you should check to see if there is a prerequisite. And the only thing it mentions is that you cannot be in 200 and 150 at the same time. What's 150? Who cares? I'm not taking it anyway, right? So there's no prerequisites, so we're good here. No prerequisites there, no prerequisites there. Great. Now I'm going to go to my next class, my SysU classes, and see if there's any prerequisites there. So I'm going to go back to the course catalog, and the first time I tried something that didn't work. I looked under S, a logical thing to look for. So I tried something down here that didn't work. Nothing down here that starts with an S worked. So I said, what about up here? And the first thing I tried didn't work. All right, but I tried this finally, and that worked. And I was able to find all the SysU classes. They were coming up, and there is a warning that says you're not allowed to register for SysU 105 and 106 at the same time, but they are both intended for freshmen. So you're going to take one and then the other, but it doesn't matter which order you take them in. So this is something you've got to be aware of. No prerequisites, but not concurrent. Okay, warning. That could be important later. Let's look at 205. 205, the prerequisite is 105. So I'm going to make a little arrow that goes from 105 to 205, like that. And here's a warning. If you start with SysU 106, because you're like, everyone's going to 105, why are they doing that? I'll just start with 106. What's going to happen is you can't take 105 till the next semester, and that delays you taking 205. So for somebody who wants to get through this program, they may be wiser to start with 105, and then they could take 106 concurrently with 205 the next semester. But if they're not in any rush, maybe it's not a big deal. What happens downstream? Let's find out. Okay, so there is a prerequisite for 205. It's here. Let's look at 300. SysU 300 has prerequisite Econ 100, 200, and Q1. Wow. So this one has a Q1 requirement in addition to both of the econs, okay? Let's see that. Was it an and or an or? Wow. It needs econ 100 and 200. I'm just going to scribble this. Bing, bing, because I'm using two different colors and I can see through that. Okay, that's kind of scary to me. But that means if I want to take SysU 300 right away, I should be taking econ 100 and 200 at the same time. Probably not going to happen. Probably not a good idea. So maybe you're going to be taking that SysU 300 later in your sophomore or even maybe your junior year. Oh, let's see what else is going on with SysU 206 and 306. So 206 has a prerequisite and it is 105. That's our favorite. 105 is going to be our prerequisite for this guy. Bing, like that. Okay, so why is this interesting? Because guess what's the prerequisite for 306? You'll never guess. 306 has a prerequisite of 206. Oh no, right? So I'm not going to continue looking through all these, but I will tell you that there are no more prerequisites that I want to talk about. I think that's fine. But the important thing you got to know is that if you're going to take 306, first you have to take what? You have to take 206. And if you're going to take 206, you got to take 105. Okay? So that is something to be aware of. There's a chain length of 3, chain length of 3. Okay, and that I believe to be the longest chain that you have to be aware of in this major. Okay, but you have to be aware of that. Don't start like delaying on your 105 because let's say you take 106 because you can't take them at the same time, and then you take 105 and 206 and 306. You've already promised it's going to take you a minimum of 2 years to get through that chain. So that's why you want to start with 105 because you found this chain 105, 206, 306, and you don't want to be forever, and you want to leave yourself a little bit of room because you may have to drop a class. You may find out that you have too much on your plate and something has to go. You may not pass a class and have to retake it. So anything that's in that long chain, you should prioritize just because you may have to drop it, you may have to retake it. And so you don't want that to be the reason why you're not graduating at the end. Okay, so I'm going to assume you know how to look up those prerequisites now, and I'm just going to tell you what the prerequisites are on the data side. So this course is prerequisite for this course, and it turns out that there's another prerequisite. When you look up 320, it's a prerequisite for 415, and then 415 is a prerequisite for 427, and also stat 202 or 203 is a prerequisite for 320. So you have to go from here to here to here to here. That's length 4. Again, if you already took Stat 202, got Stat 202 credit from AP or something like that, it shortens this chain for you. Okay, but be aware when you're planning these things out, you should know what the longest chain is and make sure you start working on those long chains quickly so that you don't get up against a deadline and find out that you can't fit something crucial into your schedule at the last minute. Okay, what do the chains look like in your computer science? Well, this is a prerequisite for this guy. This is a prerequisite. You had to, this star is to remind me to tell you this was actually a spring class, so you had to go and look under the spring classes to find it. But there's that prerequisite. Now this course is a prerequisite for all your electives, okay? If you just look at the CS electives that are listed on their website, they all have CS 208. Some of them have additional prerequisites, but they all have 208 as a prerequisite. So here you have a minimum length of 3. You have to take CS first semester, second semester before you can get into the electives. So if you're going to go for a CS minor, make sure you start taking CS1 right away. Don't think you can pop in a CS minor at the last 2 semesters of your senior year. Not going to happen. You've got to start working on that earlier if you want to fit those in. Okay, so if you're doing this for me in your core class, if you're taking one of these classes with me and you're doing this, I want you to bring this to at least this level of completion. I want you to put little arrows, or if you'd rather, put little diagrams over here explaining what the prerequisite structures look like, because this could be a little bit messy. I get that. Try to make it neat. And make sure you say like chain length equals 3. Over here, chain length equals 4. And over here, chain length equals 3. And again, there's a little bit of flexibility in how you define it, because it could be personal. If this is really your records that you're looking at, this is really what you're planning to do, and it's you, then you can say, look, I already have AP credit, so this is going to shorten the amount of time it takes me to do this. Okay? Now, again, if this is actually yours, you're trying to plan out your own schedule, these boxes are intended to be colored in. So if you've finished a class, you can just color it in. If you're currently taking a class, put a dot or maybe like an X, make a mark that makes sense to you. If you've already determined that you're going to take this course next semester, maybe put a dot there. Make up your own key that tells you what that means and start filling in those boxes so that you can keep track of what's happening. And by the way, this is 6 credit hours. That's why I put a line here, because your classes are taken in a 2-semester sequence, and so if you finish one of them, you can fill in half the box. But these boxes typically mean 3 hours or 4 hours. And again, also the capstone, again, don't forget that the capstone is going to be listed as a major requirement for most majors. So don't count it twice. And you could take 2 capstones, that's totally fine, but you don't have to count it twice. You don't have to put time in your schedule for 2 different capstones unless that's what you want to do. Okay? And so I hope that this has been enlightening and help you understand how the core requirements work and how the your major requirements and minor requirements kind of fit together. Also, if you take, for example, like a math major and a computer science minor, those are very closely related fields, so a lot of times you can get more coursework in for fewer courses because sometimes they'll let you double count. For example, up here in the core, if you took a diversity and equity class that also counts as cultural habits of mind, just keep track that if you can do that, but then make sure you're not overcounting the boxes. Just say like -3 to remind yourself that one of your courses counted double and then you actually only had like 39 hours in AU core. So just beware that can happen too. There's exceptions, but this is just helping you trace out basically what you're doing with your time here at AU. And then if you handed this into me, this would be fine. I would just double check and make sure that this makes sense and that you're on the right track.